Okay, so the next session is going to be a little roundtable. So actually, what I would propose is this. Why don't you guys bring your 3 chairs and put them up here? The only problem is when we sit down, they can't see us. So yeah, bring your chair up here. And then what we'll do is we'll field some questions. So we have some, obviously, hopefully, questions from the audience, from everyone. And then we'll have some questions online. And the only thing I ask, though, is that when you speak, please just stand up because will be right. Don't you think, Keith? Right? It'll be if they can see. Yeah, it'll be better for everyone to be seen. So start thinking of your questions. Carolyn may ask the questions from the audience, or from the internet. Yeah, it won't be too many. But I'm actually going to take the prerogative as the host to ask the first question that I want to ask, which is I would love to hear a little bit about some of the mechanical aspects of it. Things like, I hate to ask things so stupid, but like pillows, mattresses, temperature. Those kinds of things. I went to, and I got a pillow from a very, very, very brand name place, and it made my neck hurt, and I couldn't sleep. Right, exactly. And so I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about the mechanics of sleep, just as maybe even a simple, like mattresses, as a simple thing that people can adopt and improve.
You're stuck holding them.
Go, Ben. Yeah, but you got to stand up. You got to stand up so they can see you.
So we do know.
Oh, here.
Can everybody? Thank you. We do know some things about this, and this falls into that sleep hygiene category that we were both talking about. People sleep best in a dark, cool room. And when I say dark, we mean dark, really dark. My children don't have night lights because I'm a sleep researcher, right? My one does, but it's red and it's in the corner and it's very dim, right? So what we know is that light at night is very toxic to people. We invented these lights. We used to just have the moon and the stars, and the moon's only there sometimes. And we probably slept under something, a tree canopy, a cave, only recently houses, right? So we need to be dark and we need to be cold. Cold like 68 degrees has been studied as a good temperature. And I always think these studies are funny because people cover up with blankets, right? And it matters how thick your blankets are. And so it's not 68 degrees precisely is the best temperature for sleep, right? It's just a temperature that works for a lot of people. So dark, it turns out that having polluted air makes people not sleep well. So if you live in a city or there's wildfire smoke going on, getting a HEPA filter for your bedroom is probably a good thing. Those do make a little bit of noise. They like to stick lights on everything. Have you guys noticed this? They put blue lights and green lights on air filters and alarm clocks. And every device you have, if you have a TV in your room, it has a blue light or a green light. Red lights are better. You guys probably know this. The red light doesn't trigger the circadian system the same way. It doesn't mess with your melatonin production. But even a little bit of light at night really messes up people. We call it ALAN, artificial light at night. And it turns out it causes cancer. It causes all kinds of problems. It mostly causes diabetes, actually. And they've done studies that even enough light to barely read a book by at night, not much light at all, even through closed eyes, messes up your circadian system enough to raise the risk of diabetes substantially. So dark is really important. There's a lot of other of these tips. I don't know. I don't want to just talk.
Sure. Yeah, I second all of those things. And just, when I'm working with people, the real world impact of it, so temperature, I think that's the biggest thing that I hear constantly. I'm too hot, I'm too cold, I'm sweating at night, I'm kind of wrestling with my comforter, taking it on and off. So I think temperature is usually one of the biggest things I see. And for different people, that can be different. So some people do like it on the colder side. Some people do like it on the warmer side. So it's really kind of individualized. But temperature is usually the biggest kind of real world impact I see for people. And then with mattresses and pillows, so if we're talking about those products, again, that's really individualized. So a lot of it depends on, are you a side sleeper or a back sleeper? And if so, there are certain pillows that are more geared toward helping you kind of maintain that position and have your spine aligned the way you want it. So you don't wake up with neck pain and shoulder pain and back pain and things like that. So, and some people, it comes down to firmness. Some people really like a firm mattress, and some people, find that that's uncomfortable. If you have a certain health condition, so if you have, you've hurt your hip or have knee pain or something like things like that, you might want to look into different firmnesses of mattresses, or body pillows can help you sort of position things. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's really kind of individualized for each person. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of trial and error, go to a store, just try something, and just see kind of how it fits for you, how it works for you.
Yeah, you sure can, because they know that we all want good sleep, right? And they're, dangling that out there. I will say the only other thing to add, it's something that works for me personally, is earplugs. It's the simplest thing, but it actually helps me ruminate less. I don't know why, because, the thoughts are in my head, not outside of my body. But I swear it works, so try it tonight. You can get a jar at Walgreens for like $6, have a couple hundred. Oh, and we got some today in your bag, so there you go. You can try them. They, I think for me, have become, as we talked about, the unhelpful cues and starting to be fearful of our bed if we're not sleeping. For me, they've been associated with good sleep, and so I think I get kind of excited, and it tends to work well. So I'll throw that out there.
I love it. That's perfect. Okay, so remember, however much you spend on pillows and mattresses will be way, way cheaper than the drugs that I give you, right? Or the surgery that you're about to get, or whatever is going on. Yeah. Here.
Thank you. Okay, so on one of the slides, the gentleman in the middle, you skipped right over it. How about the coffee? Oh, yeah. I didn't hear anything about the things that we can do to help us.
Yes,
as far as that goes.
So let me cover 3 things that everybody asks about in that category.
Can you stand up for me?
Yeah, of course. So my patients we talk about coffee. So caffeine is the active ingredient in coffee, also black tea, also other things. It keeps us awake rather well. It actually works by blocking the action of adenosine, which is the thing the biggest thing in our brain that makes us feel sleepy. It builds up throughout the day. We call this the sleep drive, right? And caffeine sits on that receptor site and doesn't let adenosine visit the brain the way it normally would. And caffeine is fine in the morning unless you have an anxiety disorder. It's probably fine. But I tell my patients to not drink caffeine past noon. Some people, particularly in the cancer community, particularly as we get older, our ability to metabolize caffeine out of the body just slows down. So even if you used to drink a whole pot of coffee in the morning, you might try reducing that. The other caveat is don't cold turkey coffee. Like if you get home and you're like, oh, I'm drinking too much caffeine, you will get caffeine withdrawal syndrome. You will have a horrendous headache. I mean, people admit to the hospital with this syndrome. It's a real deal. It's not just some fake thing made up on the internet. So be careful with that. Taper off coffee. Don't just cold turkey it. Alcohol, lots of people, my patients, they know they shouldn't be drinking, but I have a good relationship with them. They eventually tell me that they've been drinking to help their sleep. We know it does make you sleepy, but it totally messes up your sleep architecture, all those stages at night. It makes you have no deep sleep, and it's a real problem. And then you also get a rebound toward morning where you wake up and your brain goes like full awake mode. Has anyone noticed this? If you go out and you have a few drinks, at like 4 a.m, you wake up early, not feeling so great. And then you sort of feel like a lot of a hangover is actually feeling like you haven't slept. Now we know alcohol causes cancer. If you have trouble stopping drinking, there's lots of help for that around. If you don't know who to call, you can email me, you can email your medical team. We all have resources on this. Yeah, and then I can also cover marijuana. We don't have a lot of good data. Some people do say that it works and it helps them. And for those people, I'm like, that's fine, but why did you come to me for insomnia help if it's working so great? And so I will often have people try a weed vacation where they don't use weed for 2 weeks and see if they sleep any better. And it turns out, like, I've been doing this for a while, and my patients that will actually do this, a lot of my young people really like the weed, and they want to just do that, you know. And I'm like, it might help you fall asleep, but they actually report generally that they sleep better off the weed. Now, that's not true for every single person. And if you're doing it for sleep, or you're doing CBD or these other components in marijuana, it's, you know, if it's not harming you and it's not messing with your sleep, it's probably fine. We just don't have a lot of really good research yet. I have a couple friends in the field that are working on this problem exactly.
I love it. I hear cocaine and meth are really bad for sleep too.
They also really cause problems.
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
Let's just
it's
get it
not
out
good.
there. Let's just get it out. Please don't do any meth or cocaine. It totally inhibits.
Yes, for Ben, earlier you, in one of your slides, talked about no naps. I would die. So we have to figure out a way to work through that. So why no naps, and is any nap bad, or is short nap good? When? With fatigue, you know, that many of us have, it's a necessity. So
Yes.
I
So-
challenge that.
I love naps. They're great. I am not anti-nap. But if you have insomnia and your primary complaint is that you can't sleep at night, taking a 2-hour nap at 4 p.m. takes all of that adenosine and resets it in your brain. All of your sleep drive is gone, right? And so, you know, you don't want to do that. And so what I like to do is get people sleeping at night first. And then if they want to add back in a nap, they can do that. Always count your nap. When somebody asks you how many hours of sleep you got, count the nap, right? And you might be getting 5-6 hours at night, but if you're napping for an hour in the afternoon, you're probably getting plenty of sleep. Half the world does a siesta in the hot afternoon, right? It's a great way to do a circadian rhythm. There is nothing wrong with that at all. And if you're sleeping pretty well at night, please take naps. Like Spain, Italy, Mexico, everybody does this. So it's a great way to live, actually, with a nap. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be really long, right? I mean, we often say like kind of 90 minutes or less. There's a million people that have tried to sort of sell you something around, and sometimes the thing they're selling you is just reading their article about the 30-minute naps or very precise amounts of napping time are very important. And the brain, I showed you all these sleep stages, but they're so different for each person that you'd have to go to a sleep lab, get a proper sleep study, and then you could do that. It would probably work. But you can't just like follow a random, you should do what feels right for you. So if after an hour you wake up and you feel great, then you're an hour napper. Now, I don't recommend that people nap for 3 hours during the day because that is too long. There's too much lying down. But great question.
If anyone needs to sleep, you can always watch my YouTube videos. Puts my wife to sleep too. And let's take a few internet questions too. So Carolyn's going to read a few.
Sure. Okay. The first question is, does the fact that I don't dream or remember dreaming affect my sleep quality?
Okay. So that's a really great question. And my patients ask me this all the time. Does it mean I'm not getting REM sleep? Does it? No. So lots of people don't remember their dreams. It's actually very common. You probably are dreaming. And if you ever want to find out, you could have, if you have a bed partner, you could have them wake up quietly, sneak up on you, and see if your eyes are going back and forth. And if they woke you up at that moment, you probably would remember your dream. But it's probably true that you're just getting that sleep, but you're getting it somewhere else. Now, if you have insomnia and there's a bunch of stuff going on, or you have sleep apnea, you go to a sleep lab, they can confirm that you are actually sleeping. But tons of people say this to me, like, oh, I'm not dreaming. Well, you are dreaming, you just don't remember it. The brain actually sort of deletes them. We actually dream a fair amount per night, and most of us don't remember all of our dreams at all. If you try waking up and then immediately writing down what your dream was, I found it's actually pretty common that I am dreaming, but within 10 minutes, the brain sort of like erases it when you wake up. So I think it's just fun to try if you want.
Okay.
I've got a couple questions. One is for you, Ben. I'm curious about naps. You mentioned how you dream during REM, which I knew before, but you also mentioned that happens towards the end of your sleep cycle more. I can take a 15-minute nap and have the most intense dream you could possibly imagine in 15 minutes. What does that mean?
So that's a really interesting question. Are you sleeping, do you fall asleep really easily during the day?
that's a trick question. Yes and no. But during the day, if I'm tired and I lay down, yes.
Okay.
But I have like 15 minutes, I'll have an intense dream.
Yeah, so interestingly, what you're describing, where you fall asleep and you drop right into REM sleep, is actually a symbol. It's along with a bunch of other symptoms that you'd have to also meet, which it sounds like you don't meet, but it's associated with narcolepsy, which is that problem where you're like minding your own business and you fall asleep. We have narcolepsy with cataplexy, and they bred Doberman Pinscher dogs to have this. And so if you like come in all excited to see the dogs, they will like pass out on the floor. That's narcolepsy. You immediately fall asleep. Now, you don't have narcolepsy, because I think you'd notice.
No, I do not.
But that is actually what it's associated with. My guess is that your brain just goes there early. We can also have dreams in other phases of sleep, like N2 sleep, you can have dreams. They're just less associated with it. So you may actually be in a deeper phase of sleep, and you just happen to have more dreams right there. So without going to a sleep lab, it would be hard to tell, but it's not necessarily unhealthy at all. And it sounds like you actually nap readily, which is nice.
What would I ask? Because I have been to a sleep lab, and I will be going to another one. So what would I look for?
Yeah, so ask them to show you how quickly you onset REM sleep.
Okay.
And they will be able to tell you all about it in excruciating detail, because they have all that information really clear. And nobody ever asks them this question, right? These people that live in sleep labs, I'm not one of these people, but they're super nerdy about every little bit of your metric. And so they can explain, yeah. It's kind of cool to know.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I've got a couple more. I'll try and make it quick. Natural supplements for sleep. We talked about... very quickly, I had a friend's sister, actually. She took Ambien, and she was she's mentally healthy, and she was sleepwalking, and she literally, in Singapore, walked off the 50th story of a building. Obviously, no longer with us, unfortunately, but I will not take anything like that. What are your thoughts about melatonin or any other sleep supplements?
Yep.
Magnesium.
Yep. So the internet likes to talk about these things a lot, and there is some good data for some of them and not for others. So let me start with melatonin. So melatonin is a hormone that your body makes normally. The normal dose, and it's hard to figure this out, but the normal dose that your body makes every night is 0.5 milligrams. That's the endogenous dose that most of us make if we're healthy. Now, lots of people want to sell you melatonin in volumes of like 10 milligrams or a lot more. Some people like to take a lot. It actually can cause agitation at higher doses. And it is like not necessarily super harmful, right? Like it's kind of like got other properties that are useful in the body. The key with melatonin is it's not a good insomnia drug by itself. They've studied this actually fairly carefully. It does make people a little bit sleepy. It does expand all the sleep phases a little bit. But if you really have insomnia, melatonin is not going to fix it. What it's great for is fixing circadian alignment problems. And if you want to try melatonin, at a low dose, I recommend like 3 milligrams to start. It probably won't hurt you. You want to do a couple things. You want to get it from a reputable source. There's a lot of problems. They've studied melatonin is like... There's these companies that make it that are not making melatonin. They're putting other stuff in there, or they're putting way too much melatonin. So you can talk to your pharmacist about a reputable brand of melatonin, because these things are not regulated by the FDA. And then take a low dose, and then take it an hour before you want to go to bed, so that it kicks in and you have the right circadian timing onset. That's my advice for melatonin. Magnesium, there's some evidence that it does help. If you take too much, it can cause GI problems like diarrhea. If you already have diarrhea, I don't really recommend doing that for fun. But there is some evidence that it helps. Again, it's a small effect. And these behavioral therapies, these cognitive therapies that we all talked about, are at least an order of magnitude more powerful, and they don't have side effects. The other thing with melatonin specifically is that it can make you really groggy in the morning. So if you're experimenting with it and you just don't like that, don't take it. Magnesium doesn't really have that problem, but yeah.
I can't take magnesium, so is there one that you might recommend other than I've got Crohn's, so I can't take magnesium?
Yeah, there are other things that have scant evidence, but really the best treatment are the behavioral and cognitive things. And if you just have nighttime anxiety, the relaxation is really powerful.
Think about that. What if I had a drug that was magnitudes better and had no side effects. I mean, golly day, it's incredible. Carolyn, anything else?
Yes. Let's see. Tips are needed for interrupted sleep. What would you three suggest?
So this is super common in the cancer world. People wake up to have to go to the bathroom a lot, right? And I actually recommend and do with my patients some relaxation techniques to help them fall back asleep more quickly. The other thing you can do is do a little bit of that sleep compression that I was talking about, where you limit your time in bed. And there's a funny phenomenon where the brain will look at the bladder and it will ignore a full bladder signal if you are asleep for about twice as long as it would if you were awake. So sometimes people that wake up a lot at night aren't sleeping well. And if we do some behavioral therapy and help them sleep better, they suddenly have about half as many interruptions from having to pee at night. Other people wake up at night not for having to go to the bathroom, just because they're anxious or they have trouble falling asleep. We used to sleep in the Victorian era. People slept in 2 chunks, right? So they had the first sleep, and then they would wake up and do stuff, and then the second sleep, right? And this is after we invented candles, but we hadn't invented lights at night yet. So they would do that. And that's probably a little bit unnatural, but it's perfectly fine to have wakenings at night as long as you're piecing together 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep. It's actually not harmful. It just makes you a little less efficient. So I hope that answers that question.
I'm not sure exactly who this is for, but I think there's probably a handful of people in here that suffer like I do. I'm obviously self-diagnosed with ADHD. If you were to come to my office when I was a college baseball coach, I got like 27 projects going on all at one time, and they're all in this brain here, and I'm losing my mind all day long. And I understand the idea of the leaves going down the river or whatever. I need a pretty doggone big tree, a whole bunch of leaves. My question is, when I go to sleep, I can go to sleep like that. In like 1 minute, I can be sound asleep, and I will sleep so hard and so deep, and then I'll wake up, and it'll be 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I feel like well, am I really asleep? Am I not really asleep? And then eventually when I get up, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
What is that, and is there any way to combat that?
Absolutely. So ADHD has been studied a lot, and I happen to really enjoy ADHD people like you that are creative and energetic. I may know one who might be me. So this is a very common thing in my patients. ADHD and sleep disorders, they actually think ADHD might be a sleep-related disorder. The correlation is that strong between ADHD and sleep problems. And so what that means is that we want to really do all the things that we've all talked about to help your sleep, particularly sleep compression. Cognitive therapy is harder to do when you have ADHD. It's just harder to stay with, and your brain is going to want to intrude on that more readily because of the impulsivity piece, right? And so I like the really behavioral stuff, that get out of bed at 3 a.m., go to a nest, compress it for a couple weeks and see if we can get your sleep to follow when we re-expand it. That's what I would do if you were my patient in clinic. And I would explain to you how it works so you'd be motivated, right? It's that Pavlov guy and getting rid of that stuff. And then we would set goals for how to do that really in a detailed way, like Seth would if he's seeing somebody in clinic. That's what I would do. You might look into the drug trazodone, which I mentioned in my talk, as a way to just expand that period. And you could also try melatonin, because a lot of people with ADHD have trouble keeping a schedule, and it means that their circadian rhythm gets a little bit wonky. So those would be if you want pharmacology, those would be the 2 things I would think of, and you could get that from a PCP. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Adherence, maybe that would be something from the coaching perspective.
Yeah. So when it comes to adherence, just it's kind of a lot of things that Ben talked about, but just doing them, I guess, consistently. So kind of if you need to for some people, just setting up reminders of, here, if we're trying to have like a specific bedtime, let's set up kind of a bedtime reminder or something like that. And also, I think that, if you do wake up, say you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., I think one of the first things a lot of people do is they look at the clock and they kind of start telling themselves this story. I wake up every night at 3 a.m. And so they start watching the clock, and now it's 4 a.m., now it's 5 a.m. And so I think, if we can sort of keep our eyes off of the clock and just tell ourselves, it's dark outside, which means I still have time to rest. Let's go to our nest, like we talked about. So kind of just having sort of mental kind of reminders to yourself or talk like that, where instead of thinking, oh no, it's 3 a.m., now everything's ruined, it's just we still have more time to rest. Let's go rest in a different place and be calm, and then when we're ready, we'll bring it back into bed when we feel drowsy. So hopefully that's helpful for that.
Well, maybe I can just ask, and if anyone knows, I mean, I've read that historically, before we had lights, before anything, people would go to bed when the sun went down, right? Like at 5:30 or whatever, and they would get up at midnight, light a candle, do their things, and then go back to bed. I mean, there's something to that, right, Erin? I mean,
Yeah, I think Ben was just talking about the Victorian era, and they do that kind of two-part sleep. Oh, yeah, so kind of doing that two-part sleep. So yes, I think Ben's point, and what the evidence shows us with cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is that we want sleep, but you have to count all the sleep you're getting in a 24-hour day. And I think there's a common misconception that we should all be sleeping 8 consecutive hours, and it should be during these perfect time windows, and that might not be what your life looks like, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting bad sleep.
I wanted to add just one thing. If anybody has ever been camping for a long time outside without lights or backpacking, you can feel the way we used to sleep, and it's very powerful. You tend to shift to an earlier schedule. In fact, Ken Wright is a good circadian biology researcher, took his students camping with just fire, no flashlights, for a week. And he studied their melatonin onset, which is how you tell where someone's circadian phase is. And he found that they all got advanced, right? They all started to go to bed early, about 8 o'clock with the sun down. And you can feel that pull. I mean, you go camping and you're like, well, there's nothing to do. We got to go to bed. It's dark. And you start going to bed at 8 o'clock. And you start waking up about 4:30, because that's when the birds are awake in the summer, right? And they just harass you into being awake, and then the sun comes up. And that is the natural circadian rhythm. And there's some evidence. We used to say that like everybody can follow whatever sort of they feel like, right? That the late people should be allowed to sleep late. And there's some truth to that, especially if you have a circadian rhythm disorder. But people are actually healthier on something that's closer to that natural schedule. I'm not saying you all have to get up at 4 a.m., right? 6 a.m. is probably good. But if you're not fighting with the natural world all day, every day, if you're not out of alignment, it really makes a difference to sleep, but also other broad areas of health.
So my question is, like, my wife has insulinomas, and before she had her Whipple, her blood sugar couldn't stay up for more than 3 hours. So we'd have to wake up every 3 hours, feed her, then try to put her back to bed. What's your stance? Like, how would you help with that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thanks. So that's really tough, right? And these insulinomas, like we actually talk about stable blood sugar in part of sleep hygiene, right? Like you want to eat a meal and not be hungry when you're going to bed, but you also don't want to eat a ton super late, right? And what you're trying to do there is balance something that the body does naturally, right? And it's just exhausting. We suddenly realize how sophisticated all these clocks in our body are because they do this automatically. When they're broken, it's really exhausting. You must have been, and both of you must have been a mess. Yeah. And so you have to do that to stay alive. You have to get up and eat. So it's hard to argue with, right? Like I don't have a solution for that. It sounds like post-Whipple, that's been a lot better. And I think that's where you want to like really work with your medical team and see if there's a solution that fixes the problem itself. I will say having stable blood sugar over time will help you sleep, but you already know that. So, yeah.
And that's our art thing. Like we don't have a problem, or at least I don't now, but falling asleep. But at that point, but at that point, it was because towards the end, before her Whipple, like she was still asleep, and I'm sitting there feeding her food.
Yeah.
just making sure that she'd wake up and know who I am in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very.
like it was just a very hard struggle. So I was just seeing if you guys had any solutions to that, because that could be a real problem again. So
There's a lot of problems like this in oncology, and what I end up doing is helping people with the stress of it, and then when it gets resolved, like yours did, making sure that they resume sleep again. Because again, it sort of sets up that conditioning of fear in the middle of the night. You're worried about dying of no blood sugar, and you're worried that she's going to die, and you're doing all this probably near your bed, or you're worrying a lot in bed about it. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't persist. And weirdly, it does for a lot of people. And so I often help people, they went through that period of difficulty a year ago, and they've had insomnia since then, right? And unless we undo that conditioning, it's not getting better. So that's where I end up helping people, I would say.
And Erin, Derek is a caregiver, right? He's the caregiver. And so what does that mean to him?
Yeah, so a great example of recognizing the impact this has, if we think of like you throw a rock in the pond and the concentric circles. And so certainly so much is happening to your body and your mind, and then the direct impact on you and how your sleep was greatly impacted in the stress that likely brought on for you, not only now, but long term as well. So.
This is kind of a general question, but sleep issues versus sleep disorder. Can you kind of take us through the journey of how do you determine what is an issue versus what is an actual disorder?
Sure. If I'm remembering Ben's slide correctly, it's 3 hours of sleep or less for 3 nights for 3 months is the official?
There's no actual hours on it.
Oh.
Yeah, so what Erin's referencing is the formal definition of just insomnia, which is one of many sleep disorders. And that definition is that you have a bad night of sleep at least 3 days a week for at least 3 months. But I will say, like, if your sleep problem is bothering you, it's bothering you a lot of the time, and you're motivated to do something about it, we should treat it, right? We shouldn't just wait around. And I really, diagnoses are something that somebody made up, and that we can study, and they're helpful for insurance reimbursement. But I think, if you're having trouble and it's bothering you, we should fix it, right? Like, I don't need it to meet some category. There's a lot of sleep disorders that are very specific, and diagnosis is incredibly helpful. If you have some of these parasomnias, if you're sleepwalking, if you're sleep eating, if you have sleep paralysis, if you have really distressing nightmares or sleep terrors, like there's a lot of ways sleep can be broken. I mentioned in my talk there's the disorder where your brain doesn't actually paralyze you when you're dreaming and you act out your dreams. Like, we have drugs for that. It works. Narcolepsy, we have treatments for. So diagnosis is super important that way. But I just like helping people with their sleep, especially if it's in sort of the more bothering you sort of era instead of a specific diagnosis.
So I'll follow up on that. I've been to sleep centers. They're looking for sleep apnea. I don't have it. So getting a diagnosis in today's world medically, I find it to be just a vicious cycle. And it makes me angry, okay? Because I'm over here doing all this stuff to try to sleep better. So I wanted to do you have any insight on where to get a diagnosis, where to go? Who cares to help you?
So I would say, I think there's a lot of really good sleep centers, and it sounds like you've probably reached out to these folks. I would focus less on the diagnosis and focus more on the functional problem, right? And so you could reach out to somebody like Seth or somebody like Erin and I in our clinic, and we could probably help you sleep better. And to me, I don't really mind if there's not a formal name for it. If you have difficulty sleeping, people have weird things that have not been categorized yet by science because you're 1 out of 1,000 people instead of 1 out of 100 people that had the problem. And you need a sleep clinician that has a lot of experience, I think, years of experience to catch those random ones. But a lot of these basic principles that we're all talking about work really well to treat it. And so I would go with that functional approach. If you want, I'm happy to talk with you offline about what a diagnosis might be.
Yes,
But
thank you. And I did get your email. I want to ask, what's the difference between a cognitive behavioral therapy and maybe a sleep coach? Is it about the same?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so when I sleep coach, I do use elements of cognitive behavioral therapy. So I don't do a strict CBTI approach. I have elements of it. I also have elements of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. I'm not just a strict clinician for CBTI. So I'd say that I have kind of a blended approach with those things. So it's more about, kind of using those things as they're applicable to you and coming up with a plan that includes some of those things as needed. Whereas if you went to, a sleep clinic or found somebody, they might be more by the book with it. So I suppose that's sort of a differentiation between a sleep coach and a...
Thank you. Thank you.
If you guys have kind of
I would say, and Erin and I have talked about this, like Seth, actually, I don't always go by the book either. And I find if you go to a sleep lab and they refer you to somebody, those folks go by the book. And I feel like it's overkill, honestly, for a lot of our patients, especially because cancer folks that have insomnia are not like the insomniacs that are in the world in general, right? It's a lot of times you didn't have, you weren't so predisposed, you just had a heck of a time with your cancer, right? And so it's actually easier to treat cancer-related insomnia, I think, than it is to treat somebody who's had insomnia for 10 years in the outside world. They're both very treatable. It works for both. But that flexible approach, we can be much more efficient. I'll often see people for 2 sessions, and then I'll do a follow-up call with them. And that's it. And they're sleeping better. So it can be very flexible. And Seth, I like your approach.
I have some more questions. If there's any...
Carolyn has some questions. So let me just reiterate. I love what both Ben and Seth said. It doesn't matter if you just don't feel good. That's fine, right? Let's try to help you feel better. Carolyn, you have a couple.
Sure. Okay. So this is an interesting question. Is there any data on a particular time of healing during sleep? For example, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Is there something helpful?
Yeah, so basically yes, but everybody, what their brain does when they're sleeping is quite unique. And that's, you'd have to go to a sleep lab and look at the staging and sort of see where you are. So it's not really fair to say that every single person on Earth between 10 a.m. and midnight is doing sleep stuff that helps them encode memories for the next day. Right? But people have by stage, so by waking people up at certain times and disrupting parts of their sleep, we have learned that parts of sleep, like REM sleep, is actually really good for stripping bad emotions, intense emotions, out of a memory. If we wake people up, we find that they're worse at that, right? If we wake them up only when they're in REM sleep. Deep sleep is really good for cleaning out junk from the brain, preventing Alzheimer's, also helping you feel really like you've slept. There's a bunch of things in N2 sleep. Some of them are about motor function. So yes, lots of different things are happening. And it's very complex, but it's not on a schedule that everybody's aligned to.
I can make one quick comment about the other organs. Obviously these are masters of the brain. But your digestive tract and the timing and your liver and your pancreas, they all are actually on that circadian rhythm. So when you sleep, it allows your metabolic rate to drop. That's why we encourage people to not eat right in the middle of the night and stuff like that. I think the nutritionist can tell you all about that. But there is an element of that. But if you get good sleep in general, then your body will follow along with it organ-wise. Yeah. All right.
So the various stages of sleep that you've talked about earlier, deep sleep 1. Excuse me. Thank you. Sorry. The various stages of sleep and deep sleep being 1. So what percentage of the total sleep experience should be deep sleep versus the others? And how accurate is this stuff that you get on your phone?
Yes.
Like last night it said I woke up 5 times.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right or not because I don't remember, but anyway, generally, what percent of our sleep should be deep sleep and the others?
Yeah, so it's about 20% of sleep is
20?
deep sleep. And you asked a great question, which every patient now is coming in with an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring or a Fitbit, and their device is telling them that they're getting no deep sleep, or they're getting too much deep sleep, or, it's all over the place. And so I actually have a grant where we're doing teaching for cancer clinicians, and my part is about sleep. And so I actually looked into all the data on all these sensor devices and how accurate is it really. And it's terribly inaccurate for sleep staging. It's pretty good at detecting if you're awake or asleep, but not as good as, it's about as good as self-report, right? Which is, we could also just ask people, right? So the device adds a little bit in some ways, but is not good at sleep staging, right? The Oura Ring seems to be, and I have no relation with Oura Ring at all, that actually, it seems a little bit better. The Apple Watch is pretty good. And then by device for other companies, it varies widely. And if you want to know more about this for your device, I can send you the data we have. Every device has not been studied, but what they do is they take that device, have people sleep, and correlate it in a sleep lab with that gold standard, which is polysomnography. So the short answer is we're terrible at staging sleep from your wrist. We need more channels of stuff to do that.
Amazing. Well, friends, I think we. Oh, sorry, Erin.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to say one other thing is I think all of these, the last several comments and questions are really helpful and meaty, and I hope are things you can walk away with. But if we kind of zoom out a bit, what I'd encourage you to think is that sleep is natural. You will sleep. There's not a specific supplement or pillow or amount of nap time that's going to lead to perfect sleep. And I think the more tightly or rigidly we hold on to our expectations, the less likely we are to sleep or feel like we're getting good sleep. And so I'd just catch the thoughts that you're having or the expectations. Said differently, we've done some work in the field of psychology about locus of control. And if we have an internal locus of control, we think that we're capable and that everything will be okay. We have better psychological health. But if we think the answer is outside of ourselves in a supplement or pillow or watch, it's not going to set us up for success. So that concept of radical acceptance and flexibility, just try and catch yourself a little bit, and I hope that that's helpful.
Oh, that is beautiful. All right, everyone, round of applause for our guests. I would like to personally, thank you so much, Erin and Ben and Seth, for being here and sharing all this incredibly important information with us. I think this video is going to be important. We're going to keep this video on forever, I hope, and just add to it and continue to encourage people to live better lives. I hope that it's not just for our neuroendocrine patients, not even just for cancer patients, not even just for caregivers, but really for all human beings, right? Because it is a primal thing. Did you ever think, Kel? That's actually an interesting question. So the actual, Keith, you want to answer that question actually? Or Stacy can answer it.
Yeah, they're on our website. So where you go to register for these events online, we then upload all the videos there. So they live permanently by subject. And they're also on YouTube. Right, and they're linked to our YouTube channel as well. Mm-hmm.
What do you search for on YouTube?
If you look up Healing Net Foundation, it'll be the top videos.
Perfect. Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, well, let's just kind of wrap up. We still have a raffle to do. Dun, dun, dun. Brrr. I know people are so excited about the cookbook. I always am. I love to cook. And the first cookbook goes to Larry Roybal. Boom. Did you get one last time, Larry? I can't remember. Okay. Larry's always been great. They've been both here all the time. Okay, one more cookbook. Dun, 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 dun. You see, I'm not looking. We're going to take this one. Sherry Rogers. Oh, my gosh. Sherry is, quick comment about Sherry. Sherry is one of our really tried and true patient advocates, and she is kind of walking the walk we talk about, living off of the grid, growing her own foods. I mean, she literally brought me a vanilla plant, which still hasn't rooted yet, because it is so important to her. It is so important to me. I mean, there's a reason why there's no plastic bottled water here. I mean, these are all things that we really want to believe in. And as we were just discussing, none of this matters if I can't get any of it to you, right? None of it matters. So if we just keep poisoning you with, with apps and white light all day long, and everyone's not doing the things that we're not doing, just as Erin said, nothing will happen. And look, you sleep well, fine. You don't sleep well, that's kind of your problem, right? But if we can help you and you can adopt it and you can really make this a part of your life, I think that everyone will just live so much better, so much better. So thank you all for all your expertise. Okay, so let's see, what am I forgetting here? I do need to thank Keith and the group from Catch It in Time for doing all the video work and putting it on round of applause for the AV people, because they never get enough credit. But he's been such a wonderful part of our team. Again, thank you to the University of Colorado for the space and the beautiful view and the wonderful room. I want to make sure that we always thank our staff from H&F. Carolyn is our outreach person, and so she's the one who's kind of really getting these messages out to people, which is fantastic. And remember, Stacy still has a bunch of tickets for the museum and for the walk, so please, for the 4 miles, so please do all that. It's a gift to you. And just a quick thing about parking. If you've done the parking thing, if you did the QR code, you're done. So don't worry about it. The moment you drive out, they'll figure things out. All right, friends. So this is about living life, right? This is about living life. I work hard. I give some of you guys, including this one, a tiny, tiny bit of my soul every single time, so that you can live well. And so that whatever little piece of care I can give you, whatever piece of knowledge they can give you, whatever little bit of sleep they can give you, is so that you can live well. Be with your family, do the things you want to do. Just remember, life is very, 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 very precious. All of you, almost in this room, have faced that fear, right? I know that because there are a couple of you that we had to snatch from the jaws of death, right? Literally, we've had to snatch from the jaws of death for some of you. And so the fact that you're here with us and the fact that you're rejoicing with our community and talking about what it is to live life is so important, which really leads me to our final event. Our final event is on November 1st, okay, Saturday, November 1st. It's going to be at the zoo, because we want to live with the animals, we want to live with nature, and we want to live, right? So it's going to be at the zoo, and we are going to talk about life, essentially, and the spirits portion of it, and what are the priorities. We're going to have some great speakers. We're going to talk about palliative, medicine too, because that's part of living. We're going to talk about priorities in life, because some of you have had to rethink about your priorities all of a sudden when you realize you don't have forever to live. And remember, none of us have forever to live, and we should all be living our lives like this, because every day is precious. So be well, everyone. Be safe. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you November 1st.